Hey everybody, welcome to segment 11 of Pilates, P's and Q's. Today I am talking with Sacha. Sacha, say hi.
Hi.
And Sacha has been a Kinstretch participant, both in studio and now online. And she was asking me a bunch of questions through Instagram direct messages about the FRC certification, and was just asking a lot of different questions that I thought were excellent to just kind of discuss over a chat live, because some of the questions that she asked, I've already received very similar questions from. So anyways, we chatted a lot about what Sacha says autonomy, which I thought was really great. I like to refer to it as joint health. So anyways, here's some snippets of what we discussed. Sacha, you want to say anything?
Thanks for watching. Hopefully some of these things resonate with you, and they definitely resonate with me, and I'm really enjoying this journey of learning more about the FRC system and how I can apply that to enabling clients to have more autonomy over their internal system and a more lively and engaging internal dialogue with themselves and how they maneuver their way through Pilates and life.
That's perfect. See, you know what to say.
Yay!
High five.
Making that mind shift of like, we're not talking about a specific movement pattern. We're not talking about a specific shape with the body, talking about potential and capacity and intention, right? So it's like, okay, we're gonna shift the brain around and seeing like, what is it we're doing? Yeah, which is how I came to that whole question that I sent you about rowing, where I was like, what are we doing with people then? I was like, wait a second. So if I'm teaching group Pilates and for the sake of like keeping things fresh and exciting over my group classes, I put in a rowing sequence, and like 7 out of my 12 participants lack shoulder extension and thoracic flexion and thoracic extension, or, and internal rotation, all of these things. They lack those things. And then I have that programmed into my set. Are the springs at that point and the straps at that point facilitating motion that they don't have? Or are they just really muscling through shit that they don't have at all? Because I'm starting, you know what I mean? I feel like a monster. It's like, what's actually happening to their body at that point? Because they're attempting to achieve a shape without the capacity or the tools to get there. So are the springs actually just molding them into a shape that they don't possess?
Without telling you that you have to, I don't want to tell you that you have to do that. But let's say if you want to get creative with class, if you wanted to do rowing, because it is a great exercise, you could literally spend your entire hour trying to put exercises together that would facilitate that movement, because that movement is, I mean, let's go through it. There's lumbar flexion and there's shoulder internal rotation, there's shoulder internal rotation with shoulder extension, there's thoracic flexion, hang on, into shoulder flexion, external rotation, and then spine control to come back up. Right. You literally could build a whole class just leading up to row, right? But that takes time, and that takes, good vocabulary, both on exercises, and also, if you're teaching a group class, you could have several different versions that would be more appropriate for certain people that lack certain things, or everyone could do the same thing. You're not really causing harm. And the springs, yes, in certain areas, they're loading the joint. So that's a lot of load in shoulder internal rotation. And if you don't have shoulder internal rotation, guaranteed they're taking it into their scapula and their cervical area.
Right.
So that is one thing to keep in mind. But for the most part, you know, the
like
flexion, right. And it isn't to say that, okay, well, then you can't do. So this goes back to, this is actually what I wanted to cover with your questions. Was one of your questions was, so in the courts, do they go over contradicted movements? I'm actually reading it because I actually Snapchat, I like screenshotted some of the ones that I wanted to go over. And you asked, do they go over contradicted movements for specific populations? And you list osteoporosis, bursitis, RA. And then you were asking about repertoire. Like, do they give you the knowledge, and do they give you the exercise do's and don'ts, kind of like, that's kind of what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
And for specific populations. And my point was that there's a lot behind that question, in the sense that, like, I can have a person who had a total hip replacement and be in a total different position as far as neurological control, history as far as pain, compensation, just general fitness, like, are they active? Are they not active? And all those things contribute to answering, like, what technically is a do or don't for that situation. Because I might have another person who has hip pain and is not active, or has a history of injury, or was a former gymnast, for instance, right? And they may have the same symptoms presenting to you, with totally different approaches and reasoning and abilities. So what is the best medicine? Movement. So it's mostly about choosing the most appropriate movement, and that comes from really looking at how their joints function, right? And once you know how their joints function and how they perceive their own joints, that's when you can decide really where to go from there, right? So it really shouldn't just be determined by, oh, if you fit in this category, then these do's and don'ts. Like,